Um, so what I wanted to focus on today primarily was a case that took place. Well, let me see how I can get into this. I got back late, so I'm not even as well prepared as I usually am. I know I'm always a little bit ill prepared, but I'm especially less prepared tonight. And I wasn't even sure I was going to do the broadcast because I've been working on this story that surfaced regarding an individual named Walton Samuel Gayson. Now, Walter Gayson, I'm going to be a little sporadic here in the way I do this because I'm still trying to set up also. He was accused of murdering 4 young men somewhere near his compound, as they described it, in Estrella, Arizona, which is the southwest part of, it's a town. It's a little far out from Phoenix, but southwest of Phoenix. When according to the limited sources that we have, because it's very sketchy, he said that these 4 individuals broke into his house, and because of that, the space aliens took them. I guess harmed them in some way and took them. Now the 4 individuals, this happened in March of 1997. Actually, I believe even on March 10th, 11th, or 12th of 1997, maybe even the 13th, right around the same time as the Phoenix Lights, the famous Phoenix Lights that took place over Phoenix that were widely observed and were very disturbing to watch from the many people that observed them because they were so ominous and so unusual. And there were a number of different kinds of sightings during that time. People should look into it to see what it was about because it was on the news. The governor actually at the time said something about it, and they even performed a stunt with an alien dressed up, a person dressed up like an alien to make a joke out of it, when the facts were that something very big happened then. Now, according to this story, Gayson had leased his house as many as 5 years before that to Marshall Applewhite, which is the name of the vehicle, physical body, that Doe of Tiendo took to perform his task from the next level. Now this is the return of the father and son, Tiendo, incarnate, like they said they would come again as Son of Man. That means offspring human, or human offspring. They said they would come as human offspring again. And that's the way they always come, like they said when Jesus left with excuse me, with his physical body, and 2 members of the next level, presumably, were standing there and said to his 11 or 12 disciples at that time, or more than that, maybe were in observance, because the women weren't frequently counted in these depictions. And when they observed Jesus in his physical body after he proved that he was physical and not a spirit and said that he was not a spirit, even though there's some Christian leaders that even today say that Jesus was a spirit when he came out of that tomb. There are more false prophets wearing sheep's clothing being the cloak of spirituality and religiosity and Christianity. And so he proved that he was a physical being, and then he was physically lifted up, or he lifted himself up if he had that capacity with the new body that had transformed itself in those 3 days or so that the body was in that tomb. No doubt with the help of his crew, who was older member, his heavenly father, because the father was not incarnate, so he was a heavenly father. He was in the sky. He was in from his spacecraft. He was operating, and it was also a physical body, which he ended up showing, seeming to show, or demonstrated the physicality of on the Transfiguration Mount when he got his instructions to lay down his life, commit suicide, basically, because he knew that that's what would happen to him when he gave himself up. He knew they hated him, and they would see to it that he was killed. And at that point, he was ready to go because the task was over. He had accomplished what he needed to accomplish for that trimester, in the three trimester series of birth experience, with Moses being the first trimester and Jesus being the second, and then Tiendo being the return of the Father and the Son, who were the same as Jehovah and Moses, the same as the Father and Jesus. That's the way they work. They work in teams, and they work in crews, and they work in organizations. The kingdom of God is not a spiritual place. It's a physical place. They have soul bodies that are far more dense than a human spirit. But there is such a thing as a spirit, and that's a frequency-based structure that holds information. And when it's on the human level, it's a spirit and it's etheric. You can't touch it, you can't feel it. But if it's a member of the next level that graduated the human experience, eons before that, eons to the eons power before that, they receive, they grow their mind in the process of overcoming their humanness and their mammalian ways so that it's more dense, and it actually even has physical characteristics that if you touched it, you would feel something. I believe something like feeling the wind. Because of the denseness of their soul bodies. Light body, if you want to call it that. Although light body has been distorted into being a strictly a New Age or paranormal or witchcraft idea, which is part of the Luciferian space alien fallen angels plan to make it into, to keep people away from looking at it in the reality that it represents. This has been an ongoing program to distort the reality. And the next level allows that because it puts to the test the souls that they seed, whether they will have the tenacity to keep on looking for the truth and not taking the first opportunities or the second opportunity or the 100th opportunity to break away from that quest for the truth. And with that quest for the truth, all individuals will eventually come to being prepared to identify an incarnate member from the next level. uh, whether they are as Moses or as Jesus or as Do, Tien Do. Because this was the first time, at least in this current civilization that started some 6,000 something years ago, which wasn't the beginning of human, wasn't the first civilization on the planet, is not by far the first planet that has human intelligent, if you want to call humans intelligent, life on it. Because intelligence isn't just measured by data and how many things you can think you know. Because even all the things that we think we know, the next level can change them. They can design an entire planet with life forms as abundant as this planet and with structures, physical structures, skyscrapers, space flight, airplanes, nuclear power generators, wars, weaponry, entertainment, and yet they could be operating on a planet that is right within our own solar system, and we would not be able to identify anything that's going on there as being the same as what we have here. Because they can change the frequencies that everything's based on, and the way that matter actually configures itself and then relates to the way our senses perceive it in colors and touching and what we can hear and touch and feel and perceive, understand. So, with that little synopsis of where we're coming from, where I'm coming from at this point, which I do believe speaks for where I got this information from Tien Do, having been with them for 19 years, their student, who fell away and was given another opportunity to connect with them, and have taken it and have to take that opportunity every day, because it's not an assumption anybody can make that once you're in, you're in. It does take a lot for them to basically throw the key away on somebody that has shown faith and trust and desire to be on a prospective student and member of their crew. Because that's what this is. This is a God astronaut training program. I'm saying this, I'm not talking about what I'm doing. Although this can be like an introduction to somebody. But it's only a pointer to Tien Do, because the real God astronaut training program that Tien Do at one point called the program, the overcoming process, the conquering of human mammalian behavior, they called that a God astronaut training program. And they compared the kingdom of God at one point to a corporation. Of course, not a corporation like the human corporations that are into profit, except that the next level do have their form of profit, and their profit is that they take crew members, new crew members from the environments that they create and seed and then develop and maintain and bring certain of those seeds to harvest through. That's why the earth is a footstool. The human kingdom is a footstool. It was not designed to work. That's why all the individuals that are talking about fixing the planet and fixing humanity's problems, and it's all well and good. It's an option to be engaged in that, And I've had interests in the same kind of things in my distant past when I was in my early 20s, in the 1970s. But when T&O came around and this information came around and the trumpet was blown, that was the beginning of recognition that there is no place higher to go than to actually return to the ultimate purpose that any human being can have, and that is in serving the organization, and in particular the individuals that seeded us with their mind so that we could become their offspring and become new members in their kingdom, working side by side with them and bringing this opportunity to more human beings. They don't need us. They don't need a certain amount of members, but they do have a certain amount of seats that they fill every time they start a new garden, birthing, harvesting, planting process. And we need to use these physical bodies in order to grow our minds. That's why they actually teach the human kingdom all along. They are teaching the human kingdom the whole time during its civilization. Some of it is built in, so there is a certain amount of automatic teaching that takes place because they seed the planet with a certain amount of true information, plenty of true information. And a lot of that, I mean, you can see it just in everything. Nature is all true information. That's reality. And they provide those that broke away from their previous programs and started to go against their efforts, tried to steal those souls that they were preparing to be students for a next level crew membership. That includes, of course, eternal life, because they don't die. They're not perennial anymore, like a human is. A human is like a leaf on a tree, and the leaf falls off the tree, and it's dead. But that doesn't mean that the tree and everything that is in that root system and that stem and that branch is dead. It's not. It's still very much alive, and it comes through a new bud. The new bud is a new vehicle, but it's not a reincarnation of the leaf that fell off the tree has its spirit that goes into the spirit world, but each new leaf has its own spirit. That's why it said in the New Testament that man has only one life to live. But it also says in many places that, like Jesus said, that his disciples were coming back, and that he came back, that he lived before, and that God was a God of the living, not the dead. So God wasn't a God of spirits. God is a God of, when he says God in that term, in that way, he's talking about his older member. Or he's saying the kingdom of God, the next level, the level above human, the evolutionary kingdom level above human. Lots of ways to kind of say it. And each word is very, very strong in all the things that it means. But I'm not going to go into that right now because I do want to get into the topic, because this topic is a current Luciferian fallen angel space alien effort to try to bring an attack against, in the war, against those that are attempting to serve T&O. T&O are outside their bodies now, the physical incarnate bodies that they had. while they were here for 24 years. Well, 12 for dough and 12 for tea. Not coincidental on those time frames, by the way, but they come out pretty close exact from their awakening to when they exited those bodies. And T was the Revelations 12 woman who was giving birth to the son. What she was giving birth to was her younger member, Do, who she was birthing into to the throne. In other words, so that he could actually handle the graduation without her physical presence. So she got him going, and then she left. And then she took care of it from her protected place, whatever spacecraft she had, or location for all I know, in the heaven at that time. The heaven actually is the spacecraft itself. That's why the heaven is the first thing that came to the, before the planet was even in existence, there was the heaven. Because it was the abode of the members of the next level that were working. It was the laboratory. It was the staging ground for all the operations that were going to happen on this planet to make it into a garden that could end up yielding new life. And new life only means to the next level life in their kingdom. Because life in their kingdom is eternal life. That's the only kind of life they know. They don't know death. So we have a facsimile of life. Well, maybe not, facsimile is not the right word for it, but we have a glimpse of life, a temporary glimpse of life in the brief time that each human exists, and then through our history, through our brief history. Because it is very brief to the next level. 1,000 years is on the human level is like one day in their framework, even though they don't have days. They judge, they have timing by events. That's why they taught in the Old Testament to use the moon cycle and the sun cycles, because those were the events. So they use the events in whatever garden they're using for their timing. And comets are part of that event, and those events, and as signs, those are the signs that are provided. And not just comets, but all kinds of meteors or asteroids, or like we saw in 2012, in the beginning of 2012, in February and March, with what I said was, I believe was the 12th trumpet, not the 12th, the 7th angel sounding, which have been criticized for saying, because I said that Ison was those Revelations 15:1 was the showing up of the 7 angels with trumpets. And all they did was come around, go through the sun, come out the other side of the sun, and then you could see that they were an armada of objects. Not positive about that. I might be wrong about some of that, but I don't mind being wrong about it. But why not be alerted to it? If it's true, then it's one more sign that has taken place already. I've already said that. It's very, very clear to me, because T and Do let me know this through a dream, through Destody, that Obama was the black horse in Revelations chapter 6. And what did he bring? A tremendous job of balancing 2 oxen, 2 beasts, And when we use beasts in this terminology, it's bestial humans. Humans that act like animals. Predators. Murderers. Robbers of the world. Of people's lives. Rapers of the earth and its resources. Destroyers. That's another name for the Luciferians. Destroyers of the earth's resources by injecting their radioactive materials into everything and then ignoring all the cancers that are starting because of it, and all the degradation of the food supply that because of their lack of paying attention to the vital aspects of life that need to be treated with tremendous love. Love meaning giving, caring, consideration. And when we make mistakes, change. Even when we don't make mistakes, change. Because if we're not changing, then we're not growing. And that's the way it is with religionists right now, spiritualists, atheists, paranormalists, paganists, secularists, governmentalists, politicians, politicalists, scientists, entertainers. If we're not changing, then we're stagnant and we're dying. I'm not talking about changing by earning more money or helping the people in Africa. Yes, lots of people need help. I'm not saying not to help the people in Africa, but I'm saying it's not going to buy your way into enlightenment or next level favor. The only way actually at this point is through tea and dough. So, forget about me and criticize me all you want because I know there's plenty to criticize. But if you really want to know the truth about what I'm saying, then ask tea and dough for that, if it's true. Now, I can understand that that's going to be new to some people and even very hard to do because of all the media and the idea that people think that they were led to their death and they were manipulated and all that baloney, which I know otherwise. Being with them for 19 years, I know that they were as strong-willed and as stubborn and as dedicated and as zealots and as kind and generous and giving and considerate and thoughtful and respectful of life as anyone in the human past that is put on such a pedestal by the humans, called a saint or anything else like that. And there wasn't a bone in their body that could be manipulated, because it's the hardest thing in the world to actually stay in a next level program, because the whole world is against you when you do it. Not like becoming a Christian or becoming a Jew or becoming a Hindu or a Muslim, a Buddhist or a Muslim or a anarchist or anything. Now, that's easy. You don't have to live up to hardly anybody's expectations except for a tiny little bit. And those expectations don't even resemble what they originally were meant to be for all those organizations. Excuse me a second, I have to get some water. I'm burning up here. So, back to the story. Um, I'm curious if this is working. Oh, that's nice. Very nice. Okay. I don't know how much Bible stuff we're going to do today, but tonight. So I started off with a little summary of the story about Walton Samuel Gason, who was arrested, and said that for the disappearance and alleged murder of these four individuals. Well, all they found was an SUV that was turned over, and they said they found a bone fragment. And they showed a picture in one of the articles that was published that looked like a big piece of bone, like a part of someone's spine. And they're calling that a fragment. But there were four men, and they were off-roading for fun at the time, and and they were never heard of. And one part of the story, and this one reporter did all the stories that I found on it, and his name was Lauder. Not the reporter's name, the name of the. I will get you the name of the reporter. Let's see. Let me think here a second. It was posted by David Collins from kwbvnews.com. kwbvnews.com. If you search on the Lauder, Lauder case, you will find that all his articles related to that case and other things that are related, like the prison there and where Gason was taken, you will find all kinds of contradictory data. But the biggest thing that I was concerned about when I first saw this was the implication that Gason was in touch with Marshall Applewhite, those vehicles' name, and that they are alleging that Gason informed Marshall Applewhite by telephone the night of the Phoenix Lights, or the day after the Phoenix Lights took place on March 13th. And as a result, it was surmised by this reporter, or whoever his sources are, which seem to be very sketchy, because I doubt he's the one that put all this together, but maybe I'm wrong. He certainly could have been. According to him, this individual, Gason, called Marshall Applewhite, and because of that call, Marshall Applewhite instructed his students to get ready to lay down their lives, which started to take place less than 2 weeks later, on the 21st, 22nd, 23rd of March 1997. Which couldn't be further from the truth, and I can document that by a lot of documentation. That Doe had been preparing for that for a long time, for years, actually for many years. But it was only a consideration for uh, maybe 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 years before that, while it was public conversation with his whole student body before I left. So I was part of that conversation with the whole student body in September of 1994, when he first announced that he felt like we were going to have to take it upon ourselves to exit. When before that he had thought that we would exit by being picked up by a spacecraft with our physical bodies, or that our physical bodies would be killed by the government, like in the Branch Davidian fiasco, murders by the government of men, women, and children, burned them alive. If you believe that wasn't intentional to burn them up, then you have a lot more trust in human beings than I see evidenced throughout the world, when it comes to the leadership, that is, especially. And that leadership extends to all the ruling class and everybody that's in bed and in service to that leadership. Though I think we have to draw the line and say that if you know, if you're just paying your taxes because you don't want to be arrested, you're not necessarily giving your allegiance to that country. Like I said, that the mark of the beast in your head is by your patriotism to that, so that you want to actually, you think the same way, and you're going to support that party line. That's allegiance to the beast in your head. And allegiance to the beast with your hand is that you're actually serving them. And I believe it will come to a point to where even serving them by paying into their systems will be seen by the next level as turning you back on the next level. I might be wrong about that. There might be degrees to that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't pay our taxes. Jesus said pay our taxes if we're going to use the money system. And Doe didn't give us any indication that Doe paid all the bills. T and Doe paid all their bills, and they paid all their taxes for all the students that had jobs over the years. Why? Not because they believed in all that. No. Well, I'm not saying that they didn't believe in the value of tax money and then going towards services and things like that. I can't speak to whether they thought there were good things about that. Because we had talked very little politics and socialized social commentary. We didn't really do much of that. But they were very common sense and very thoughtful about everything they did, and financial matters as well. And they were giving individuals, so they were there wasn't a manipulative bone in either of their bodies. And by the way, for the record, I keep on seeing these quotes in these articles that still come out, that people kind of rewriting the history, of the whole event from 1970s to 1997. Actually, after that a little bit, but 2000. And they keep on quoting Balsh Robert Balch a great deal, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. And I can say that. I'm sorry, Robert, if you're listening to this, but you've gone on record as being an authority, and you haven't taken responsibility, in my opinion, for what you've been given. And I gave you a lot of personal testimony when you came to my house. uh, I don't normally speak to people on my broadcast, but I guess I'm taking a shot at it right now because Doe had me stop in at his office in Colorado, not in Montana, where he was the professor, and probably still is. And I like him fine, as a person, and there's nothing wrong with him. He's an okay guy, but he made his whole kind of writing career on the infiltration with the group early on that he did as a part of his thesis with David Taylor. And then he wrote articles for Psychology Today in the mid-70s, 1976, I believe, and probably another one. And then he wrote articles for other people, and then he started writing chapters in books and wrote his own articles and essays and a lot of stuff, and did a lot of research and spoke to a lot of people and got a lot of first-hand information from the likes of me and others. And spoke to a bunch of dropouts, most of which ended up, last time I knew of, going against Tiendo. Because if you're not for them, you're against them. That's what it's coming down to. I mean, to a certain degree, there's an in-between for a while. And we may still be in that while. I think we are. To where we can be wishy-washy about it. But by the time each of our vehicles dies, if we're wishy-washy about it, well, I don't think the next level is going to have any use for our soul. Which is not the reason I'm doing this. I'm not doing this because I want my soul to be saved after I die. I'm doing this because it's like I received a tremendous injection of their mind that even though I failed to keep my body in order and keep control over my vehicle's ego and sexuality, probably the two biggest characteristics of the Luciferian space alien fallen angels, that try to stimulate that in everybody so that they will not be able to consider entering into a program for actual next level membership, which is the only form of enlightenment there really is. Everything else is a facsimile. Pseudo-spirituality, pseudo-enlightenment, pseudo-advancement, pseudo-heaven on earth. All illusion. So, excuse me. So this this Walton Gason because he said that space aliens took those 4 men, the evidence was all confiscated, whatever evidence there was. His testimony was confiscated after he was arrested. One report said that he was let loose. The only real suspect they had was let loose right away. But most of the reports say that he was arrested and that the feds took him to a federal prison in Colorado, in Florence, which is a maximum security. I think it's called Supermax because of how fortified it is. How nobody gets out of there. Yet they said he escaped some years later and then killed himself near Rancho Santa Fe in the same way that they killed themselves, by setting himself on fire, which of course they didn't set themselves on fire. I'm talking about this. These reports are like so filled with lies. It's so obvious, but you know what? I've already had people, well, one person, the phony guy that was appearing to be by the name of Timothy in my blog, sawyerhg.wordpress.com. I just had to give the ultimatum of change that name or be blocked out of my blog. I don't block anybody normally unless they're acting like the way he acts sometimes. And he acts, other times he acts, kind of decent to communicate with. And he's actually where I learned about Gason. So I welcome debate. I will debate you all day and all night. But give me something to debate on. Don't just tell me that I'm wacky and insane. Tell me why I'm wacky and insane. And if you don't like my explanations, fine. But if you're going to start being derogatory and insulting and sarcastic and backbiting and deceitful by using OD names when you know I respect those names and because they represent individuals that were in T&Do's classroom. And that doesn't mean that all the ones that were given OD names ended up being among those graduates. They didn't. Most of the OD names fell away. And for all I know, are running, one of them in particular actually might be running the website that that this author from this Arizona news website who's writing these reports refers to as crymightily.com. crymightily.com, which actually takes you to a site that has to do with the Phoenix Lights. And says on it that the 4 men were taken, they had to be taken, or something like that. I'm not very good at quoting on the spot, so that's why I'm saying something like that. It's certainly implied that whoever was running this site knew something about or was related to the taking of those 4 men. And of course, relating that to the Phoenix Lights. And using T&Do terminology throughout their website, which has very sketchy information on it, mixed with Harold Camping information, mixed with talk about rapture and things that T&O didn't talk about. Certainly not in those terms, those archaic, misunderstood ideas. Rapture is when you leave your world behind. That's being caught by the next level. It's when a soul comes back and captures a human vehicle that was designed to be captured by them, by the gardeners, by the ranchers. So a human basically is like a horse, like a wild horse. And the rancher goes out and corrals a whole bunch of them. And then tries to match them up with trainers that are going to break them. And some of them don't want to be broke for nothing. And they will fight it tooth and nail. And the next level's fine with that. They will just let those go back into the wild. They won't harm them necessarily. They won't harm them. They'll just let them go. But the ones that submit, that's right, it becomes a submission for an animal to submit to the will of someone they can't beat, or they don't have the effort to beat. That's the kind of animal that the next level then can help mold into a tool that can actually be used by a being that is in an evolutionary level above human. Like a human is an evolutionary level above animal, and animal is an evolutionary level above plant, and plant above the mineral kingdom, or the lowest kingdom, elementals, or however else you want to try to describe it. So then those horses that were actually taken over by those humans, what they also learn when they finally give in to that rider or that plow driver or whatever it was, the techniques that were used to help train those horses for service, what those horses recognize is that they love their master. Their master takes good care of them. They get brushed, they get fed, they get washed, they get to have friends, they get to have mates, they get to do all the things that a horse would want to do. They get to run. They get to, the only thing they can't do is go run with the pack again. And many of the ones that, the ones that become domesticated don't want to run with the pack again, even if they had the choice. They wouldn't hop that fence and run away, go with that pack. They would, if they would, then they would. But I guarantee you, most would not want to. They would, when that meal came around the next morning, when they were expecting their grain, they would be right at the gate there waiting for it. Believe me, I know, I've taken care of horses a little bit. They're wonderful animals. And the next level thinks of the humans that they train as wonderful humans when they accept the training. They love the humans that accept their training. I mean, they love their entire creation because the whole creation was an act of love in the fact that if they didn't give that opportunity to live, then no one would have the opportunity to actually be sitting in their shoes, giving others the opportunity to live. Like Jesus said, there's no greater gift than giving your life. And giving life is giving your life also. Because uh, um, we need to show others um, that it's worth it, because we know how precious what we have received is. And we know the value of it to a degree, I hope. I mean, you can always learn, you can always have more recognition of the value. Even after I was in the group for 19 years, I still had big gaps in my consciousness about the reality of Tian-Do. Even though I was giving public meetings all around the country. I was the primary speaker. I was going to all the news media. Because I knew what to say, but I didn't just know what to say. I had received Tian-Do's mind into this vehicle. And it was performing service. But there's a point to where Tian-Do makes sure that you are faced with the things that you're not overcoming, you're not conquering, you're not prevailing against. You know, an Israeli was he who prevails as Jehovah. In other words, the overcomers. Do said an Israeli is an overcomer. It has nothing to do with the country and the name Jacob received anymore, even though that was the origin, because he had that battle with that Luciferian space alien, fallen angel. That wasn't a member from the next level that he was having a battle with. I don't think. I suspect not, because a member of the next level, well, I don't know. I don't know what happened there, but I suspect the battle was his form of Luciferian battle with a Luciferian space alien. And that he overcame enough to where he was given that name, and they wanted to use that, his seed, because of the seed carrying all that experience genetically, to foster the genetic strain that the next level could then use for their 3 trimesters of birthing experience for those individuals that accepted the program that Moses gave, and then when they died, they got brought back in souls to be with their genetic match of the same level of information, understanding, and willpower and everything, so that they can continue their lessons. And that's what, when Jesus left, he said that they were going to have to continue their lessons in the New Age. Yeah, New Age, which just took place and is now. The age ended with 2000, and Tian-Do and crew, 42 individuals, end up leaving in 2000. Well, not 1997, 98, because 4 followed the 38 students. And those 4, for a while, I thought maybe been confused with the Gayson alleged suicide. And they were Wayne Cook, and I'm going to say now Rick Edwards, or Rick Odie, but Edwards was an assumed name too. Now I forget his vehicle's last name off the top of my head right now. And another individual was Oscar, who laid down his life, but he laid down his life in Vitavu by the same way that Doe and crew laid down their lives by sleeping pills or drugs, phenobarbital with vodka and applesauce. And I knew Oscar, and I met with him in 1994, after I'd left. It's interesting that I went around and met with all the dropouts after I left, and I was the last kind of original member, original because I came from the Walport meeting, to leave, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was the last original member to leave. Which is my choice because of my failure. And then Doe gave me the choice. He was going to promote me back into an overseer position that I had when I told him I couldn't do it because I was a hypocrite. Because I hadn't overcome my indulgences in self-simulated sexuality at that point. So, and Doe said, well, I guess you need to be objective. You want it to be more objective. And I agreed, but I didn't know what he was talking about. And left. And then it was 1997 when they laid down their lives, knowing, not that they would do that, but knowing that the possibility existed. And so it wasn't that big of a shock for me to hear about. But I just knew I had to go to the media, even though I was fearful of doing so. And I didn't really want to be part of the group at that point. I didn't disbelieve anything that T and Doe talked about over the years. And that even disturbed many of the people in my vehicle's family that I talked to about my experience, that I didn't talk about it as a negative, or that I got out of the cult. Because it was easy to get out of the cult. They helped us out of the cult. They ordered us out of the cult. They saw to it that you left the cult if you weren't pulling your weight. And they didn't make pulling your weight that hard, as if they were trying to get rid of people because they felt guilty. No, they didn't like people leaving. I saw how they suffered when someone would leave. I mean, this is impossible for a human to actually understand. Or let me say it's near impossible for a human to understand if they haven't received some of their mind. If they have received some of their mind, because a lot of deposits were made in preparation for T and Doe's incarnate arrival, then even though they may have a lot of trouble believing in everything T and Doe taught all at once, they are going to have trouble with that, well, for the most part. Even if they don't think they may think they believe it all, but they'll find out later where their doubts are. Maybe in this lifetime, or maybe when they're brought back after they're saved for a future harvest opportunity, which would probably look like a Moses experience in a new civilization after this civilization is wiped clean. So that doesn't resemble any civilization on the planet, except the Luciferians will be saved in a new crop in various places that are underground, that the next level will see to it are not disturbed by the recycling, so that when the time comes and they want them to come out to put their new student body to the test with their disbelief and their being against the next level ways, those students then will be faced with dealing with all the thoughts and the doubts that they always had, that they hadn't overcome yet. And that's the process. That's why it's a training program. And the next level doesn't make it imbalanced. No, they provide all the help, but we have to ask for the help regularly. But if we don't ask, they're going to offer help anyway for a while, at least. But if we keep falling and we never ask for help, eventually, they're going to wait until either our thirst builds up enough, or they're going to let circumstances in the world end up helping us. They won't keep us from those circumstances. In other words, they'll let certain calamities happen to those that are their students rather than keep those calamities away. They'll make them fend for themselves more in terms of having to supply their own food instead of helping them find ways to be fed that are more easily manageable because they're providing service to the next level by trying to learn the lessons and sharing the information with others. Because the next level don't need anybody that's not serviceable. There's no standing around or sitting around on the equivalent of a cloud or with a harp in your hand playing music. They don't do that. Sure, that's human activity does that. They don't do that. It doesn't mean that they are always busy. They can be just observing the heavens as they're driving through the universe in their spacecrafts. But at the same time, they could be also thinking about the tasks that they have. Well, I know they're going to be thinking about the tasks they have and how they can do them and their plans on how to do them and what their instructions are and and what the different parts of the task are and which students are going to be part of which parts of the instructions. And in that way, they continue to grow even when you're a member of the next level. Even when you have a physical body that no longer has the capacity to go back to human behavior like the Watchers did. The Watchers must have had the capacity to go back to human behavior. Otherwise they couldn't have fallen away. It certainly wouldn't have begun to propagate with the mortal humans. Mortal being just a human that hadn't received a soul deposit. Because the soul deposit is like the seed that Jesus talked about. It's actually a physical container that holds only holy mind. In other words, only mind from the level above human. So, in this website, supposedly, there was also a suicide video note left by Gason. And there are so many holes in this story. But the feds said when they took him into their custody that they were exercising the Secrets Act or something like that. And also it was the whole subject was national security related now. We know that story, right? And yet, supposedly for 15 years he was in prison and was not brought to trial. And then supposedly he had an interview and I thought that was the way it was. I thought yet another report said that he escaped And then on May 21st, 2011, he killed himself by lighting himself on fire, saying that he didn't want to be here after the rapture took place that Harold Camping said was going to take place on that day because of the end of the world that was going to happen on that day. And yet another report stated that it was 2 years later on that day, May 21st, 2013 actually, that he set himself on fire. And I mean, I don't know if they're intentionally putting all this confusion into it, because then we don't know what's true, right? We don't know what's true about the story and what's not. Any part of it could be a lie, could be misinformation, could be a mistake, could be an exaggeration, could be an assumption. So they've completely mixed it up. But there's going to be a certain amount of people that are going to be left with the idea that Heaven's Gate was somehow involved. But not Heaven's Gate, the individuals that left, because those are the only individuals that went through the gate. The gate's still there. The next level can open it when they want to open it. That's the doorway. Door was the doorway. And the key is overcoming our human vehicles, behavior and ways, and taking on the behavior and ways of a member of the next level, according to the way Tiendo provide us with those behaviors and ways, by example and by instruction, same as Jesus did. But on a more, for the third trimester, on the most advanced level of completely bonding with your older member, incarnate, by completely willing to give your entire will to them and wanting to exit with them by laying down your life. And it says in the Bible, they call that falling down on your face, even though falling down on your face also means putting your ego aside or just being humbled before your older members. But the biggest form of showing that humility and that love for the next level, older member, is to give your life to them. And Jesus talked about this quite a bit. It just happens to be the parts that are the most made into figuratives and not focused on at all. Which included the whole castration thing, because Jesus talked about making yourself a eunuch for the kingdom of heaven's sake, being what could be seen as a positive if you're ready to receive it. Doe even wondered if the male of the animal species and the human species was designed for an easy way to kind of clip off the reproductive mechanisms. But in this article they talked about, well, I don't know, maybe I don't need to go through this article anymore. Yeah, I'm going to end up posting on my WordPress site, the detailed analysis of all this. Um, but for now, I told you kind of the salient points. and so with the energy I still have left, I want to get into Revelations 12 some more. Okay. So I'm in Revelations. I've gone through a number of these in the last broadcasts, so I don't want to repeat them right now. But the woman clothed with the sun is T, and she did have the sun's light wrapped around her, and was also um, providing her son as offspring, and her light, the light that was born from her into the next level, because Doe is an older member of the next level. He is a father already. But I believe this is his first opportunity to bring a student body, bring offspring. So he's a father in the sense that he's an older member of the next level and has overcome humanness many times and proved to the next level that he's capable of looking to his older member and bringing the student body to harvest in the way that his older member would have him do it. And they don't, there's nothing dictatorial or robotic about the next level. There's nothing rudimentary about the next level in the way they do things, and there's nothing that's not important in the next levels. Efforts. So I'm going to skip down to there appeared another wonder in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon. This is verse 3, 12:3. And behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, 7 crowns upon his heads. Well, these are the Luciferian space aliens and their organization, and how they rule the 7 continents, the 7 heads, and probably also might have some relationship with individuals that fell from the next level when Lucifer did. Perhaps there were 7 of them with him. And the 10 horns are those 10 human organizations that are working on their behalf. So those are what's called the beasts. And of course the word beast was misused in the New Testament. It's got 2 different Greek words. And one of them, when you see the context, is referring to members of the next level. That's one word. And the other one, when you're seeing it referring to the beast coming out of the bottomless pit, is referring to the Luciferian space alien influenced human and human equivalent workers that still have physical bodies, and also those that are discarnate. Because the Luciferian space aliens have both discarnates and individuals that have physical bodies on spacecrafts. The discarnates are the original fallen angels that died. I don't know if they all died, but uh, or if they didn't die, then they have an ability to leave their bodies in order to influence um, humans, or they have the ability to cloak their physicality around us, like the next level does. He let me see one once, a Luciferian space alien fallen angel, and he was black. He didn't have any light in him, or her. I don't know. I don't know. There wasn't any identification, gender identification. It looked like someone had thrown a sheet, a black sheet, over um, a toddler. No, bigger than that, a young teenager. I guess you would call it a tween. Um, so that you saw the head shape and the shoulders, and it glided by me after I was awakened, and I was sitting on the side of my bed, and I could see I was conscious of the room, and very little light in the room from stars or wherever it was coming from, the little night light things I have. So it glided by me, and I'm not going to tell the whole story, but that's about all there was to it. And then I had another experience that was much different than that, but was also um, very revealing of the true nature of these invisibles, which was a woman naked from the bust up, and with long flowing hair that looked like it was blowing in the wind, and she was hovering over my partner while I had a partner at the time, the mother of my child, my vehicle's child. She was in the bed next to me when I woke up, and I looked up, and above her I saw this woman hovering, and I thought, whoa, that's weird, and because I didn't think I was dreaming at all. I didn't have that sense of dreaming, and I've had a lot of dreams. And so I looked away, kind of shook my eye, closed my eyes and looked away, and then I looked back again, and the same individual was still there, laughing at me. And I can relate actually more details to this story because I actually know who this individual was related to, because I was having somebody in my real life laughing at me because I was thinking that they might help me. They were giving me the impression that they would help me with my book at the time. This was like 10 years ago. And I was believing them when the truth was that they were just leading me on so that they could prove I was wrong about Tian-Do. So they were being deceitful, and this person was like, I'm not saying that that the human that I was relating to was doing any of this consciously. I don't believe so. But I believe this influence, this discarnate, this Luciferian space alien fallen angel type, wow, I mean, looked like her, um, I had what my vehicle would consider to be an attractive look, and was laughing. So it was like, that's before I even knew that she had faked me into thinking that she would help me by editing my book. So, and then I had a whole bunch of just sightings of spirits. I had that many times. Not anything in the last couple months though. But I don't care about any of that. Those people that use spirits are responsible for a lot of what takes place that we don't know how to determine, how to explain in any other way. And it's because the spirits that are instigating things between people. That's what the whole secret video is about. It's about basically voodoo. And voodoo is all about spirits, motivating spirits to go do their bidding and actually set people up for problems, which can do the opposite, is set people up for problems in the sense of the accumulation of wealth, which will never make them happy, but it will take them away from a potential next level membership if they can't just discard it when the time comes and they're offered that opportunity. So, Revelations 12:5, and she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up into God and to his throne. See, caught over here, caught up, actually to seize. So the child is seized up to God. Now this took place, and that's what I was trying to get at before with Balsh. People keep saying, based on Balsh, that Doe started everything. They say it in different ways, but it's wrong. It's completely wrong. It's a lie. It's deceitful, actually, to not become aware of this. Anybody that believes this is ignoring the facts, and the facts are that T woke up Doe. And I can go through a lot of examples of this that Doe gave us. He thought she was hitting on him at first. And they got together based on astrology. And Doe was interested in having his chart done, but T wouldn't do his chart unless he asked 3 times. But she didn't tell him that he was going to have to ask 3 times. But I don't know if she made an exception in this regard. I don't know if she ever did his chart. But they did quickly recognize that they had something to do together that was bigger than both of them. And so they started trying to figure out what that was. And they did that by creating little organizations, one called the Christian Arts Center, which they got kicked out of. The place they did it in St. Thomas University, where Doe was teaching, had been teaching. But Doe met T in the hospital where T worked, because she worked for preemie babies, keeping the premature babies alive. But she was substituting for a friend, and she was actually helping Doe's friend, Doe's male friend, because Doe at the time had I guess she was considered to be bisexual because he was married at one point and then and had children, and then became divorced, and then was having relationships with men. So he was gay, homosexual. I know it's impossible for anybody in the Jesus communities to believe that the one that was Jesus could come back and have anything to do with a gay vehicle. Well, you know the way the next level looks on sexuality? It's all It's all dirty to them. Just like for us, uh, dogs eating each other's poop is dirty to us. Even though I guess some humans are doing that too, but they're just acting like dogs. So when I say that it's dirty to them, sexuality is dirty to them, it's because they have outgrown it. Not because they read in a book that it was wrong or bad or naughty. And they have outgrown it because you can't go to the next level if in your mind, which is saved, which remains in you, you're still addicted to a certain amount of sexuality and sexual feelings and sexual impulses, and having those hormones going through your blood and then giving that energy away through masturbation or reproduction or any of the ways that humans give it away. Because the fact that probably sexuality is the biggest form of entertainment on the planet is because of the Luciferian space aliens who desperately want more and more bodies so that they can have more and more genetic material and blood and opportunities to steal humans into their family or their environments or their crews on their spacecrafts. And to have eggs and sperm that will be tied together genetically with a mindset for the brain function that doesn't have a problem with the reality of space aliens and the reality of spirits and the reality of thoughts and the potencies and the realities of anti-gravity and the realities of space travel and people on different planets and all these things because they don't have too much room for too many new bodies on their spacecrafts and in their underground facilities. But they do have a constant need for new bodies to be able to make new bodies. Because rumor has it among them, because they've been underground, they were underground before they were let loose this last time, which is depicted by Revelations 9, verse 1. Get that right? I think so. Or when the bottomless pit is opened, which happens right before the two witnesses come public, which took place in 1975. They're trying to get off the planet, but they know, rumor has it, because there's going to be that the recycling is coming, because that's what happened last time to their ancestors. They're the descendants of those individuals, the Luciferian space aliens. And so to them it's only rumor because, after 1,000 years or more, it's hard to maintain the truth about things, especially if a lot of your underground bases were wiped out and you don't have any records anymore or any computers anymore because you lost electricity and your batteries all ran out and you didn't have any more solar-powered systems and whatever it was in the last civilization, whatever they had, whether it was called Atlantis or Muria or Lemuria or Mu or so now here where it says, and the woman fled into the wilderness verse 12:6, Revelation 12:6. And the woman fled into the wilderness where she had a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. Well, there's that famous 1,260 days. Well, I believe that took place after the 1,260 days of Tiendo giving the prophecy publicly. That's what prophecy is. It's a public declaration of the inspirations and the actual teachings of from members of the next level. That's a true prophet, a true prophecy. But these two, of course, are far more than just prophets like the Old Testament prophets. This is the Father and the Son that are doing this job. Because of how corrupt Tiendo said that they came together because of how corrupt this planet had become. And you can tell how corrupt they are when almost everything I say is either laughed at or ignored or ridiculed or just in some form rejected without second thought and without reason. Some people bring reasons and then I shoot them down because it's easy to do. Because Tiendo gave all that, all the basis of it. Tiendo didn't talk chapter and verse. They didn't teach chapter and verse. They talked about Jesus a little bit here and there. They talked about Moses a little bit here and there, and they talked about Enoch somewhat, a little bit, here and there, and Elijah a little bit here and there, and other things in the Bible here and there, some of the Psalms and a lot of the things Jesus said that he talked about in terms of behavior and ways that were required to be a prospective student, that he didn't do it for you, as many Christians have been brainwashed to believe. He did it for you only in the sense that to show you how, what you must do, to show you how to do it, and that you must do it also. Each individual needs to enter into their own christening. And that christening will entail bonding with that older member who takes you through that birth canal. Because you will have to get rid of everything of your previous world. Will have to be left behind. That placenta is left behind in order to be born through that birth canal. So everything that got you to that place was a positive. Even if it was falling on your face, even if it was drug addiction, even if it was that you went to Vietnam and you murdered somebody. If you changed your mind, that's the true meaning of repentance, to change your mind, which is a continuous process with the next level. Because Tiendo are constantly introducing students to new ways of thinking about certain things. And each time they would bring us a new way of thinking, it reflected more of reality. It's not like the old things were false and the new things were true. It's just like when someone reads the current records, called scriptures. And then they think they understand them or enough about them. And they read what other people have said and they understand them. And then they go away and they come back to it, let's say a year later. They look at the same verses. All of a sudden it's like new things pop out at them. That's because as we grow in our experience, then we also have the potential to grow in seeing more of what was there all the time. But ultimately you can't see the total picture, the most accurate picture, if the words have been so distorted to make everything look a certain way, which is what perhaps all the translations out there do. There are some that are better than others. That's why I use the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament and Strong's Concordance and uh, uh, other research materials that all the theologians use to decipher every word of a verse, and then looking for the context of every word, and looking in the Hebrew, and looking in the Greek, and looking in Latin sometimes, and looking at Aramaic sometimes in relationship to the Hebrew, and then looking at the context, and looking at who said it, when, and why. That's the context, I guess, and then looking for all the occurrences of that way of using that word, and looking for what they were depicting in that verse, and trying to find the literal part of it, because every verse in prophecy has some kind of literal application down the road. And so therefore every word, every prophecy can have a number of different ways of looking at it. But you're only going to understand the ultimate way of looking at it by considering that T and Do were the fulfillment of many of those prophecies, and then looking at the circumstances surrounding T and Do. For instance, in Revelations 11:3, I think it was, where they talk about the 42 months, when the Greek word men, M-A-N-E, is actually has to do with affirmations. So it's the 42 affirmants, the 42 individuals, the holy individuals in the holy city that have made the affirmations, that are treading underfoot, that are now in human vehicles. Underfoot is having a human vehicle. In the temple area, which is the area of the United States where the Next Level brought their New Jerusalem spacecraft to set down, to establish the boundaries of the localized heaven, which is the abode for those workers that were not incarnate, to help those that were incarnate or trying to be incarnate. Incarnate meaning in flesh. Incarni is Latin for flesh. Offspring human. So the woman fleeing into the wilderness for these 1,260 days is the time period from when T called off the harvest on April 21st, 1976, and she said the harvest is over. And that was the last meeting that either T or Do publicly gave. So that was the end of their prophecy. But that wasn't the finishing of the whole task. That was just finishing the phase of that task. Because now those students were going to have to overcome the world after they were wandering around the United States, giving meetings, talking about what T and Do said for 9 to 12 months. So, So that took place in Vitavu camping, Vitavu rustic camping area in the Medicine Bow National Forest, um, maybe 20 miles east of Laramie, Wyoming. Curiously close enough to that place that was called Devil's Tower with the Luciferian space aliens. Well, I wasn't going to say that uh, when they portrayed meeting with the U.S. government, because the Luciferian space aliens did meet with the U.S. government, so they were telling the truth. It just didn't happen in Wyoming. Or if it did happen in Wyoming, where it was talked about was Holloman Air Force Base the most, and there were some others reported as well. I mean, after all, in 1952, there was a huge array of lights from unidentified flying objects over the capital of Washington, D.C. that was photographed. That wasn't during a time of drones. That wasn't during a time of swamp gas over there. That's when the space aliens, they were released from their bottomless pit. I'm calling it bottomless pit because it's probably from the North Pole to the South Pole. Goes right through. And the only thing that's standing in the way are these ice packs, so there's probably no physical land in between. That's the way it is. I don't know for sure if that's the way it is. I mean, just bottomless pit also just means it's the deep. Remember, hell was considered to be underground. Well, that's because that's where the Luciferian fallen angel space aliens and all the human counterparts that are giving them or being the horses for their ride, whether they recognize it or not, who they're being riding for. They all escape to underground facilities when the recycling is coming up, and they have warning of that. The space aliens know a lot about how the the garden works and how the next level does this recycling, and so they prepare humans for some of that. But all the space aliens don't know the same stuff. And the ones that are in physical bodies now know kind of the least about what's really taking place, or I don't know. I mean, there might be some that know a lot. And that would be Rael's bunch. They're I think the biggest manifestation of the Antichrist that exists right now. Although the whole Christian community is Antichrist. I mean, in general. I can't speak for each individual, because each individual decides for themselves what relationship they want with their Heavenly Father. If they think they have a relationship with their Heavenly Father, but they call the name out of Elohim, well, then they're not talking to the Heavenly Father, because Jesus said to use the term, speak to your older member who's in the heavens, in outer space, away from this planet, and use the name Peta or Abba. Abba is probably what he said in Hebrew or whatever Aramaic form of that word. So if we want to talk to the highest beings we can talk to find out what we can do for them, because they really don't have a need to help us if we don't want to gravitate to them and what their needs are, so that they can help those that are asking for their help. So we need to appeal to them. They don't need to appeal to us, although they try, they do extend their hand out to us all the time, and they're doing it right now because T and Do are the two older members that are running the show. So after the 1,260 days of that wilderness, T and Do had sent 19 of those individuals. There were about less than 100 in Wyoming campgrounds. And they were broken up into different groups, 4 or 5 or 6 groups. I think it was more like 6 groups. And then T and Do had a group, and they had a few, they had up to 6 of the most original students from the LA meetings and the San Francisco meetings traveling with them, although they had their own car and they had their own tent. And they set up everybody with their own tents and assigned people to their cars and things like that, groups. But it was very loose-knit for quite a while in the very beginning. But by the time we got to Wyoming, T and Do found out that some were still having sex and were also smoking pot. So T and Do held a meeting and they said, no, if you want to do that, then out, leave. This is about overcoming all our humanness, and those are some of the things that need to go. And so some did leave as a result of that conversation. And then a few months later, T and Do arranged for certain ones to go to one camping area and others to go to another camping area in Utah, both of them in Utah. And the ones that were in the group that was 19 members were told that they needed more growth before they could, they weren't ready. And T and Do said to those that were remaining, which I was among, that we had made the first cut. And then there were many cuts after that, but they weren't of that scope and that kind of direct mechanism. But there were no more public presentations of the information looking for new members, potentially looking for lost sheep, until 1994, after T had left. And Do was never public during those meetings. He didn't go to those meetings. Students did all those meetings. I was one that was doing some of those meetings. And then it says, then there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels. I think this is referring to the name Michael, although it's actually Do that's doing this fighting. But he's referring to Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. Because Michael was, I believe, a classmate of Lucifer. And Michael had graduated into the next level and then became an archangel, which is the same as a captain. And Do referred to himself as a captain. I don't know if he knew the history of the word Michael, an archangel. But maybe he did, and maybe that's where he got captain from. I'm not trying to say that the prophecies and all the records are for all the individuals that are waking up more. And even the teachers are constantly waking up. but they wake up in big stages at first to get them far enough ahead of the students to where they can blow the trumpet, and the students will know that voice. They will understand what they're saying. It will make sense to them. They won't even have to consider whether to join or not, because it will be like, this is what I was waiting for. That's what happened to me. I knew this is what I wanted. Joining with T and Do and leaving my world behind and selling all my instruments or giving them away, and my truck and the house that I was halfway building. I had halfway built. Well, I made a little teepee out of logs in the Oregon rainforest. So, we've only got a minute left. So that battle was basically on Doe's shoulders, because he was the one that was actually going to be finishing this task. And so he was the one that was most closely related to all the students. And so he was the one that got all the negativity from the students and from the parents of the vehicles of the students, and from the media and from everybody who was pretty much against him. He took that first. He took all that flack sort of first. And then he, in his pulling for how to handle things, and pulled on T. And T took her battle as well from that. And it says that later in Revelations 12, how the flood was after her. And the flood is all that I just said. That was after Doe, was after her as well. She is at the pinnacle of it. And it says that they don't prevail right, and their place isn't found anymore in heaven. So they are basically, by waging this war against Next Level, they have sealed their fate that they will never have a relationship with the kingdom of God again, the level above human again. And they will be dissolved in the lake of fire. So with that said, say good night, and let me know if there's anything that I can help you with. My name is Sawyer. Like I said, good night.